Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Raise your glasses, ladies and gentlemen, because Widowmaker is finally dead after 7 years of pain and suffering. For those who've been living under a rock or haven't seen the developer's blog post in some shape or form, there's some big tectonic plate shifting changes to some of the heroes coming into Season 5, and I'm here to help break down the changes and help predict some of the meta changes too. For the sake of time, I won't cover all the changes, but I'll cover the ones that I think will have the most impact, and they should be organised by timestamps if you scroll the bar. Starting off with the one-shot changes. Widowmaker's fall-off range will now begin at 40 meters and end at 60, whereas before, it began at 70 and ended at 100s. The fall-off scale is also 50% instead of 30%, meaning Widowmaker at 60 meters and beyond will be dealing 150 damage on headshots and 60 damage on body shots. In terms of breakpoints, this is important because it means that at roughly 53 meters, you will still be able to one-shot headshot 200 HP targets, but anything beyond that, and they're staying alive. As for 250 HP targets, you'll still be able to one-shot them at 47-ish meters. The footage you're seeing in the background is from PMA Jellies, who made a workshop code to help visualize the range changes. You can use the workshop code on screen. With Hanzo, all we know is that he won't be able to one-shot 250 HP targets. Now this has some pretty big implications for range-based or poke-based comps. On maps like Havana, Rialto, Junkertown and Soccer Royale, you won't be able to play your point-and-click adventure from halfway across the map. And the reason why I think these changes, especially the Widow one, will be so impactful is that it directly nerfs what makes range comps so good: their range. Dive heroes, especially ones with burst mobility and burst damage, like Genji and Doomfist, will particularly benefit from this change, and frankly, any hero without damage fall-off benefits from this too. Forcing Widowmaker to play closer means she's vulnerable to all kinds of damage. Imagine you're on Busan downtown, and because of the range change, you could play Genji or Kiriko, wall climb up to the high ground, and potentially kill the Widowmaker. There's a clip of that in the background, and I honestly don't know how I pulled that off. We now have this weird range area where Widowmaker definitely outranges heroes like Genji, Kiriko and Mei, heroes who don't have fall off, but beyond that range, the matchup becomes more even. On Koth maps, I don't think the range nerf will mean much because they're typically more short sightlined, but because of that, brawly comps are more popular, which I'll get onto now with regards to the Mei Cass changes. So the devs clearly stated that they want to try and introduce more CC back into the game, and I know that this is a pretty unpopular sentiment among us, the community, but selfishly speaking, I do actually want more CC back in Overwatch because I don't want to be playing against Tracer, Sombra, Winston, Doom and ball comps for the rest of my life. It's why I actually play Brig, because I want to give myself the tools to deal with those heroes instead of getting Thanos snapped when I play Zen. Anyways, the changes for Mei is to make her weapon build up to a bigger, slower effect for 1.5 seconds, and in exchange, her DPS will be reduced from 100 to 55. For Cassidy, the devs want to change his grenade to where it deals less damage, but it applies a slow and it blocks movement abilities. Now I want to discuss the Cassidy changes first because they sound quite interesting. I think the strength of this change is really going to depend on the numbers here, more so on the damage the grenade does and how long your movement abilities are blocked for. Breakpoints are really important here. Currently, Cassidy's nade does 120 damage, meaning you need 2 extra shots to follow up to finish off a 200 HP target. If the devs half that number to 60, that actually doesn't change any of its breakpoints. You still need 2 follow-up shots because 60 plus 70 and another 70 is still 200s. Plus, those 2 extra shots should be easier to land because of the slow effect and the movement abilities being blocked. But hopefully, the devs know that and reduce the nade damage to something like 50. As for the slow and the Sombra hack-like effects of disabling movement abilities, it's really going to be dependent on how long you won't be able to use your abilities for. I doubt it's going to be longer than Sombra's hack of 1.5 seconds, so I'm guesstimating 1 second. But even that 1 second can lead to you tanking some real damage. A massive problem in Overwatch 1 was with CC stacking, where one hero uses a stun, then an additional hero uses yet another stun, and then so on and so forth. So imagine you get stuck by the nades, then a hack straight after, or you combo the big slow effect from Mei with the Cassidy nades. If you're playing a dive hero or especially a tank, you're gonna get cooked. And that leads me nicely onto the McFlurry Meta, or for those who don't know from Overwatch 1, the Mei Cassidy brawl comp. Some people called it McFlurry before the name changed from McCree to Cassidy, but I think it's pretty funny naming a comp after a McDonald's menu item. And I think in some way, shape or form, the McFlurry meta is going to come back, and there's 4 main reasons. The first one is the Hanzo one-shot nerf. Hanzo was played a lot in Brawl Mirrors because of his burst damage and one-shots, but now he can't one-shot Mei, coupled with the Cassidy changes, and Cassidy appears to just be a more all-around Hanzo. And that leads me onto the second point of dive. The CC changes to Mei and Cassidy makes running a dive a more painful experience, especially if you aren't careful with your micro. Grenading a Winston, warning him off, and charging up that big slow in Mei seems to be hell for any dive tank in the game. The third reason is that on maps with typically longer sightlines like Junkertown, whilst I'm not saying that ranged comps are useless, short-ranged comps and even brawlier stuff should see more use. The last reason is just down to Junker Queen. She is getting a small nerf to her commanding shout and her ult charge, but she's a great pick against dive comps thanks to her slender hitbox and her knife, which can yoink back in Winstons and Doomfists after they engage. This means there's even less of a reason to be running dive-oriented heroes. Now, at least at the pro level, there is the question of whether Tracer Sombra Dive will still be superior to the McFlurry comp, in which I think the answer to that is that it's map dependent. A Sombra hack with proper Tracer Winston follow-up is very hard to live through, but if the Winston is low HP while jumping in, or the Tracer hasn't got good micro, or if the Brawl team can somehow live through that dive, things are gonna be tough for that Sombra Tracer comp. I wonder if these Season 5 changes are going to be implemented after the mid-season madness, and if they are, I'll be very curious to see what the London Spitfire are going to cook, considering they're very well known for their brawl comps. As for the rest of us ranked plebeians, I expect to see more Ashe. The range of Ashe won't be too far off someone like Widowmaker, and Ashe's better ultimate and higher damage output makes her a solid option in ranged comps. I still think in poke mirrors or in sniper mirrors, people just aren't going to swap off Widow to Ashe, but considering Dynamite is very strong against brawly comps, which we should see more of now, I reckon Ashe is going to be more popular. Against Genji or just dive in general, I also think Cassidy is just going to get picked more often. Not just because of the Nade change, but also because of the Hanzo nerf too. Ashe is weak when played into Genji generally speaking, so Cassidy is the next best alternative. I don't see Sojourn being picked too much, because Cassidy has always kinda gatekept Sojourn with his nades. If Sojourn decides to power slide aggressively, Cassidy is always there with a nade, and now that's gonna be even more the case. Lastly, I do want to briefly talk about the Lifeweaver changes. It looks like the devs are going to give him a stat buff across the board, healing and damage wise, a heal on his life grip, a reduced hitbox, and some quality of life changes to his petal platform. However, unless the damage buff is anything substantial, and it actually allows Lifeweaver to be a threat, I don't see this doing anything. Spino puts it well, the hero is still fundamentally flawed and isn't dynamic or fluid to play. Buffing his numbers are gonna do fuck all unless his damage is somewhat threatening. It's unfortunate because I really think Lifeweaver could be a good pick in poke brawl hybrid comps where there is some legitimate utility in his capacity to reposition his team. But if he's going to be practically AFK during that period, his pick and his win rates are still going to be rock bottom. And that's it for the video. Shout out to my channel members, Craig, Nyan Socks and Resolucio, and let me know your thoughts down below on the changes. Until next time.